Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name's Rachel and I am knitting. Not right now, but most of the time. So as you can see, today's video is a little different than the videos I usually do. This is the next installment of my knit and chat series, except this time I'm telling you a story in voiceover form. So grab your knitting project, get cozy and comfy, and I'll tell you a story about my life. As you may have already noticed, I'm sharing this story while showing the process of cleaning and doing some light reorganizing in my craft room, but it's not a deep clean, so don't get too excited. Think of this more as like a shallow clean, which is more than a surface clean, but not as intense as a total overhaul of cleaning and reorganization. Okay, so let's get started. Today I'm going to tell you the story of how I learned that even when the world is over, it still turns. Ooh, ah. All right, join me back in the spring of 2005. Yes, that was a long time ago, almost 20 years, but we're not going to focus on that. Instead, we'll just keep moving. So yes, spring 2005. I'm either 14 or 15. The specifics aren't really important, except to help you understand the entire premise of this story, which is I'm about to experience a mutual attraction, and I'm about to experience it for the first time. Okay, so, well, point of order. I did have a boyfriend for an entire one solitary school day in the 6th grade, and I was engaged in preschool and then again in kindergarten to a fellow preschooler and kindergartner respectively. So, like, don't make it weird or be worried about me. There is nothing untoward happening. It was just little kids thinking any type of positive thought towards the other meant you should probably get married. Okay, so anyway, for the sake of today's story, we are striking those historical moments from the record because this mutual attraction that happened in the spring of 2005 happened during my sophomore year of high school, aka a time when you could argue I had some independent thought and critical thinking skills, or at least more so than I did as a preschooler, kindergartner, or 6th grader. All right, so now the stage is set, and I want you to take some time to think of yourself at 14 or 15. Do you remember how big your feelings were? Oh my gosh, mine were so big, and they still are, but I manage them better, I think, sometimes. But anyway, at 14 or 15, the way I saw the world, and I think this is probably not an isolated experience to mine, was that the slightest inconvenience felt like life or death, truly. This was also true of like the smallest twinge of joy in my heart. But basically everything was bigger and I felt everything so acutely. Do you remember experiencing this? Like, I can't be the only one. Basically, being a teenager is such a vivid and full period of life, if only for the feelings you feel when you are one. Okay, so I'm feeling things in big ways. The mountaintops are so high, the valleys are so low. And when it came to romance, I lived in a valley. Or at least that's how it felt to me. I had a permanent residence in the low valleys of unreciprocated, unrequited love. And I'll never be able to truly know if that was reality. Like, I don't know how other people saw me, and I'm not really interested in, lifting that curtain for better or worse, but I do know how I thought people saw me, which was ugly, fat, and weird. So yes, I was a triple threat. So I live my life thinking this way. This isn't groundbreaking, okay? Like, this is a common experience for young girls, probably young people in general, to be insecure, plagued by self-doubt, okay? And surely it's not helped by the constant barrage of advertising and the alleged ideal of perfection that young people are exposed to in media and culture. And at the time, I definitely was not immune to it. Of course, now, like, I know better, but at the time I didn't. So comparing myself to what I thought was the standard of beauty that I'd see in movies or TV or magazines, I never viewed myself as the type of girl who would take a guy's breath away or merit a second glance. And in confirmation of this, my crushes were routinely one-sided. I was used to it big time. That was just the way it was. Until the spring of 2005. See, in the spring of 2005, I was in a Spanish class. And aside from the worship songs that our teacher had the class sing in Spanish, and the fact that conjugating verbs in a language that's foreign to you is basically the most difficult thing in the entire history of the world, I don't remember much about Spanish class, except for him. Let's call him Jacob. Note, Jacob is not his name. His name doesn't even start with J, so good luck figuring out who this is if you don't already know, you creeps. Okay, so anyway, me, Jacob, Spanish class, fate. That's how it was. See, here's the deal. We were all a little more jerkier versions of ourselves in high school, right? And if you weren't, then congratulations, you're better than me. But sometimes I was kind of a jerk. And in my Spanish class, there were others like me who were kind of jerks. Like, we were kind of jerks together. This basically manifested in poking fun at our Spanish teacher routinely, always in subtle ways, but it was very insidious. We were very disrespectful. And basically, this common ire built up a camaraderie between members of the entire class. And I just want to note also that after becoming an educator myself, I really wish I could go back in time and behave differently. But yeah, it's important to recognize basically the collective snot-nosery that was happening in Spanish class. Why does this matter? Well, I didn't cross paths with some of the people in that class with me outside of our time together in Spanish class. Basically, the vast majority were outside of my normal friend group, the lunch table kids, as we called ourselves, and many of the people in Spanish class I considered to be cool kids of the school. Some even were upperclassmen. So basically, in singing our little Spanish worship songs alongside each other, like me mixed in with who I saw as being more popular than me, I felt like I was sharing air with greatness. Anyway, that's what I thought. Wow, that sounds really dramatic. Yikes, but let's move on. So we'll return to Jacob. If I felt I was in a lower social class within my high school, and the popular kids alongside me in Spanish class were the pinnacle of popularity, I saw Jacob as like an in-between. He played sports, he was good at sports, multiple sports, and he had an in with like other student athletes in the class. Equally, he had niche interests that made him like approachable. He wasn't ashamed of them. I have no idea what those niche interests were. I don't remember. It was nearly 20 years ago. If you want to fact check me, then, I don't know, get a time machine. But also, his best friend was a pillar of the lunch table kid community. So basically what I'm saying is Jacob had a foot in each quadrant of high school society. He was welcome everywhere, and he could jump down from the fence of his in-between cool status whenever he wanted. And he could do it seamlessly. I should mention this is just my perception. If you ask Jacob if this were true of him at the time, I have no idea what he'd say. The point is, I thought he was cool and approachable. We continue. The next thing you need to know is that the seating chart in Spanish class would change every now and then. And because of this camaraderie of the class's mutual status of being a snot-nosed brat to your teacher that we had aforementioned, even from across the room, Jacob and I had chemistry. I knew it. I just didn't know if he knew it. Because, there had never been a reason in my whole life to expect that a crush I had would ever be reciprocated that one day in 6th grade and preschool and kindergarten notwithstanding. I'll also take this moment to say, psst, hey, past Rach, you're married now. And your husband is super hot. He's so fine all the time. And he totally likes you back too. So it's awesome. Okay, focus, back to the story. So one day, the seating chart changed. And guess what else? It changed in my favor. That's right, folks. Jacob and I were now sitting next to each other, elbow to elbow. I gotta tell you, the way my heart would pound in Spanish class, you have no idea. It was exhilarating, but also incredibly stressful. It's one thing I learned to be in the same room as your crush, but to be right next to them is a whole different story. There's nowhere to hide. You're laid bare. Your emotions are completely at the mercy of the reality of this new shared air. And so it went. Jacob and I, along with the rest of the class, continued to pretend to learn Spanish, or at least I was pretending. I can't stress enough to you how difficult this class was for me. But regardless of if we were pretending or not, we were genuinely continuing to be snot-nosed brats. So now I wasn't just pretending to learn while being a snot-nosed brat. I was doing those things while sitting next to Jacob. Our chemistry grew and we reached the first checkpoint on our journey to reciprocated feelings. That's right, y'all. We started passing notes. I do not remember who initiated it. It could have been me, could have been him. It's unclear and really not important, but our correspondence was frequent and enriching. We were smart about it too because, I don't think I told you, we were sitting in the front row. And, to have a detailed correspondence that covered topics ranging from snot-nosery to after-school recaps to general questions about each other without being caught felt like what it must feel like to, be in a high-speed car chase and never get arrested. Don't worry, I will never, ever be able to confirm if those feelings are actually in alignment because I fear the law too intensely to research this further. So as the days went by, my feelings grew. Jacob, Jacob, Jacob. My thoughts were pinned to him. But did he feel the same? It seemed like he must, but history had shown me that this was more likely a one-sided crush. History taught me that I was likely alone in those feelings. I mean, there's no precedent for a crush who liked me back. Again, that one day in 6th grade and preschool and kindergarten notwithstanding. So then Jacob became that precedent. That's right, Jacob liked me back. And how do I know this? I'll tell you. He told me in a note that we passed. It was amazing. Oh my God, it was amazing. I was no longer a wallflower who had gone unnoticed. I was now a snot-nosed brat who would wild her way into the heart of another. Amazing! I did it! Remember again what it was like for you when you were 14 or 15 years old. Can you even describe the heightened emotions that you would have felt in a situation like this? Maybe you remember a similar event in your own life, and if you don't, just let me tell you, it was consuming. I've never done drugs, but I feel like this is what drugs are like. I don't know. I felt drunk. I felt like I was skydiving. I felt like I could kick a door down and the door would have thanked me because I was so hot or something. It was a wild feeling. So anyway, Jacob and I made plans to discuss the revelation of our shared interest further during our next note-passing session, Spanish class the following day. I could not wait. 24 hours away, I was going to pass out. I was giddy. I was electric. I learned nothing in school that day. I only had room for Jacob in my brain. I knew the next day it would be sorted out. Maybe I'd leave school the next day with a boyfriend or an almost boyfriend because my family had rules and we wouldn't be able to complete the checklist on the crush boyfriend pipeline in just 24 hours. But we could start once we talked the next day. And it basically felt like it could not come soon enough. Every cell in my body willed time to move faster. Then it finally came the next morning. I didn't die from impatience, although I thought it possible for a brief period the evening prior. I didn't keel over from feeling such big feelings. I couldn't believe it. I woke up to a world where someone liked me back. Me! I couldn't get out of bed fast enough. But here's where it gets tricky. See, I was born and raised in Portland, Oregon. If you're not aware, Oregon is just amazing in terms of its geography. If you're starting from the Portland metro area, depending on the direction you choose, a few hours in the car will get you either to mountain snow, the coastline, or to desert. You really can have it all. And in addition to being born and raised in Portland, I was born and raised to a mother who delights in surprising her children with experiences. And in fact, she still does to this day. My parents are just incredible. Okay, wait a second, Rachel, I hear you questioning. What in the world does this have to do with Jacob? You left the story with you hopping out of bed, buzzing with excitement to see him and pass notes with him in Spanish class while you're being little brats together. Why are you forcing us into a geography lesson on Oregon? Well, I'll tell you, it's because what happened next was one of my mom's classic surprises. Only this time, it did not delight me. It was on this day in 2005, the day when my 14 or 15-year-old self was so excited to go to school and plan her future that my mom, not a regular mom, a cool mom, informed me that she was pulling me and my sisters from school and we were going to Canita, a water park located on a Native American hot springs resort. By the way, Canita was and is a favorite haunt for myself and many of my friends from school and church, so definitely check it out if you're ever in Central Oregon. Okay, so anyway, instead of planning my future that day, I spent my time getting sunburnt and waterlogged while being convinced Jacob had forgotten my existence. And keep in mind, this was a life before mobile internet, a life before having a cell phone. I was stranded on a poolside chair of despair. I looked like a depressed beached whale. The next day, I learned Jacob hadn't forgotten me, he still liked me, and we began planning our future together and how we would complete the checklist from crush to boyfriend, the pipeline aforementioned, but all that fizzled. I didn't end up with Jacob, and I'm really, really glad that I didn't. But anyway, the emotion I felt in spring of 2005 were a really, really wild ride, and that is the story of how I learned that even when the world is over, it still turns. You will still be okay. You will rally even if you're separated from your crush and you have no way of reaching them to tell them that you didn't die or forget about them. I know this because I lived it. Okay, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this knit and chat. Let me know in the comments what kind of story you want to hear next, and I'll see you next time.